Hey guys, welcome to the RMH project. In today's video, we're going to be going over my training. So we're going to be training upper body for today's session. Now it's going to be mostly a push focus, but we're also going to be hitting a bit of arms, a bit of delts, a bit of traps involved in that as well. All right, without further ado, let's get into the training. Now, first of all, we're going to be kicking it off with a cross body lateral raise. Couple little cues for this. First of all, if you haven't used cuffs when doing a lateral raise, I would definitely recommend it. Some people like it, some people don't like it. For me, I love it. Takes the grip out of the way, so you don't have to worry about grip. I feel like I can get a much better connection with my delt. I feel like I can get much better mind muscle connection. I feel like I can go heavier as well. So that makes progressing a little bit easier. Just due to the fact that, you don't have to worry about the grip factor, plus the cuff comes a little bit more up the arm, so the leverage isn't as bad as well. So there's a few different factors that I really think aid, and I really think that make cuffing quite a good choice as opposed to just going with the straight handle, even if you're using grips or like Versa grips or whatever the case may be to offset the grip conditions. I just feel like having it around your wrist, and then you get that squeeze of the hand as well, which is sort of like shown to help with activation of certain rotator cuff muscles, which is a bit better for shoulder health. That could also be a little bit of a factor, but it just feels nice and smooth for me. If you haven't tried it before, definitely recommend trying it. Even with my machine movements, I try to use the one where you're sitting down and you use sort of like use your elbows, and then also the one where you're sort of meant to hold on to. I actually chuck it on the wrist. So I try to avoid holding on to any handles when I'm doing any lateral work. And I find it really works really well for me. I get a mad connection. And I've been really happy with my delt growth actually. Second point that I would add for this one as well is the pulley height. Okay, so you can see that the pulley is roughly about wrist height. Main reason for that is that we're trying to bias the length and position in this. Okay, so usually what you would see with a lateral raise is the pulley will be all the way down at the bottom. So what happens with that, when you bring it up, it makes the movement hardest at the top position because that's where the right angle is. Okay, so generally when you're 90 degrees out from wherever sort of the point of origin or the cable or wherever the pulley is generally where it's going to be hardest. Okay, so as you can see here, roughly where my arm sort of gets by my side, that's roughly where it's going to be the hardest, and as I come up, it's going to be a little bit easier. Whereas if we did it the other way, it'd be easier down the bottom, and then as my arm came up, it would be harder. Okay, so we're trying to bias length position. If you haven't watched any of my videos before, you would understand that how important the length and position is and how much I try to prioritize the length and position when I can. I definitely do have some shorter variations. I think shoulder muscles could have an argument to potentially say that you might need to hit the shoulder from a couple of different angles and maybe like a shortened bias movement, as well as length of bias, but definitely think that having a length of bias movement in there is super, super important, especially with all the research coming out. It's kind of hard to not put any sort of length and bias movement in there whatsoever. And then I'm letting the arm come across the body as well. So you can sort of see that it's actually coming across the midline. And you'll see actually when I start to straighten up on this, I actually try to turn into it. So I try to turn into it to get even more of a stretch through the delt. And I'm actually not coming all the way up. I'm just coming to where I feel this tension start to drop off. So obviously I said there's a lot of tension in that length and position. As I come up, you can sort of feel the tension start to drop off, and it just doesn't feel as nice. Whereas if I keep it in this sort of length and partial, I suppose you could call it, range, it feels super, super smooth. I feel like I get a great pump in my delts. I feel like I get a really great stimulus. And there's just, like stimulus to fatigue ratio, even though like lateral raises aren't fatiguing at all, but it just feels smooth and it feels super stimulative when it comes to lateral delts. Now, I'll let this play through. As you can see, I'm sort of taking it to failure right into that sort of bottom position there. So even sort of shortening the range of motion even still, because I'm still getting stimulative reps there. I know it might look a little bit crazy, like just getting such small reps, but still getting stimulative reps there, even if I'm just coming just slightly the way up. Now, I just wanted to show this position just so you guys can see like actually sort of how rotated in I am, and actually you can see the hand coming across, so it's coming right the way across the body, and you can sort of see the shoulders down. So I'm really trying to make sure that I turn into it, and I really try and get as much of a stretch as I can. As I said, lengthen bias movement this. If you want to chuck in some more shortened stuff with like machine lateral raises or dumbbell lateral raises, whatever the case may be, definitely go ahead and chuck in those. But yeah, just wanted to illustrate how much I'm really trying to bias that position there when it comes to the lateral raises with that one. Next up, we've got the bicep curls. So I just like to, actually the gym doesn't look too busy in this, but usually when I train on a Saturday, it's super, super busy. So I like to try and just stay on the 1K rule. So I do my lateral raises, then I go straight into these bicep curls, and then I go into overhead extension. Yeah, not too bad for these, just trying to sort of keep the elbows in. If you've ever seen Jared Feather's curls, trying to sort of copy that to an extent, I suppose. Yeah, just trying to keep the elbows in and sort of trying to lean back on it so I can get a little bit of tension in that bottom position, and just make sure that like when the arms aren't straight, it's not just sort of like dead weight that's pulling just down on the arms, but it's actually getting a little bit of tension in the biceps. So I'm trying to sort of lean up a little bit. Can't really see it too much, but you can see me trying to keep my head up, which is me trying to cue to keep my chest up to try and get as much of a stretch, and also keep tension on the bicep there as well. As again, length and position is super, super important. So trying to maximize that stretch position as much as possible. Wanted to show the setup for this. Little point is with the pulley there. Now this will make a bit more sense when I go to sort of finish the exercise and re-rack the bar, that you can sort of just drop it straight down. A lot of people will have it so low, and you sort of have to pick it all the way back up, and then you find that you're sort of like bending over yourself, or you got to fling it back around to drop the weight. Whereas you'll see with this, I'm just able to just like literally drop it behind my head, and it just falls off of where the pulley is. Also, when coming into this position, I'm letting the weight like pull me up and pull my triceps back. So this is target a bit more of the long head, okay? So the long head actually attaches to the scapula, okay? So that means that when your arm comes into shoulder flexion, okay, so your arm comes up in the shoulder flexion there, you actually get more of a stretch on the tricep. So that's why overhead tricep extensions are so effective, because it stretches all heads, okay? So long head, as I said, crosses into the, attaches at the scapula. So that means that when your shoulder is in flexion, so when your shoulder comes up to this angle, you get more of a stretch. And as we said, length and positions are super, super growth promoting. So I'm letting the weight pull me into that position, so I'm getting as much tension on that length and position. So you can see it sort of pull me back into that position, really trying to close that gap between the forearm and the bicep to try and maximize that stretch as much as possible. And you can see with that 90-degree angle that the bar is pulling me straight down. So it's putting heaps and heaps of tension and heaps of stretch on the triceps, especially obviously the long head, but both, or the other two triceps as well. So yeah, super important to make sure that you're sort of getting into that position. And again, with this one, not coming all the way up, kind of feels a little bit funky on my shoulder when I go all the way up. So I sort of stop about 3/4 the way through the rep and then come back down. Obviously, we're trying to bias length position as well here, so it doesn't really make sense to go all the way to the top, especially if it feels a bit funky. But just taking a little bit of time in that bottom position. So as I come down, I'm really trying to slow it and spend a little bit of time in that lengthened position and really try and expose that tricep to that tension, pulling in that lengthened position. So I'm under that stretch, under a heap of tension, which should be super growth promoting. So trying to get these triceps banging. Yeah, really good exercise, this one. And as you'll see, sort of when I finish this set, the reason why I have that pulley at that height, you can easily just drop it down instead of folding back over yourself. Next up, we've got the, I think it's Panata. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but I'm just saying it how it's spelled. I'm probably wrong. It's Italian, I think. So there's probably some special way of saying it. But Panata, machine incline press. This thing is smooth as anything. This stretch on this is crazy. It just feels super sweet for me. I've heard a lot of other people say the same thing, that it feels really good, but especially for myself, as I can only really speak for myself, the stretch is amazing and the squeeze is amazing. It just falls in such a nice line of path. And plus I like a quite a wider um, grip, I suppose you could say, when I'm going into an incline press, especially when I use dumbbells. I like to keep my elbows up and come nice and wide on it. So this just helps to facilitate that as well. And you can see you can really come right down. Like the stretch I'm getting on the chest in this position is insane. Scapulars together, so squeezing the shoulder blades together, trying to puff that chest to the roof. And when I come down, I'm trying to push the chest as well as lower the arms. So I'm getting double stretch there, trying to really stretch the shit out of it. I'm trying to get as much tension in that bottom position and then just driving through. Again, not super concerned about the full lockout there. I feel like everything that I do is like almost like length and partials. But yeah, I sort of gone are the days where I used to focus on that squeeze at the top. Just with all the research coming out, it just doesn't seem to be that growth promoting and that important. So that's the main reason why I don't really focus on that too much. But yeah, really nice machine. That really focused on the incline pressing at the moment, trying to sort of bring up the upper chest. So yeah, incline pressing twice a week at the moment. And then just a fly variation for the week. This is my only fly variation. Not a massive fan of flies. I got really long arms, as you can kind of see in this photo. I've got super long arms. So I do tend to feel a lot more like bicep as opposed to chest, just purely because of that perspective. I was actually thinking about bringing in some cuffed flies to see how that goes, but it just seems like a punish to set up. I still get a good stimulus to this, don't get me wrong, but I just don't think like it for how that for like how a dumbbell press feels, or that machine incline press that I just did. The tension, the stimulus, the stretch, everything that I get from that is way better than what I get from a fly, but I still throw it in there. There may be a little bit to potentially grow on the inner chest a little bit with fly variations as you can get more of a squeeze through. So yeah, just don't really want to miss it out. And I do enjoy it, but I don't get as much stimulus, I feel, as I do from pressing movements. Big thing for this, and something I know so much in the gym, is like not going into a stretch in this. And I know like I talk about this, the lengthen and stretch position a lot, but even from just like a shoulder health point of view, having so like internally rotated, not exposing the chest to a full stretch. I just think it just for like longevity purposes, like at least like longevity of your shoulder joints and everything like that, exposing yourself to that lengthen and stretch position, especially in a fly, like it just opens everything up from your biceps all the way through to your shoulders, all the way through to your chest. And then like obviously you get to strengthen it in that position as well, being weighted. So I can't see the downside of not going into that position. Even if like you weren't convinced on like the length and research that's coming out, even if you just purely thought it from a standpoint of potentially just improving your shoulder health, it's kind of hard to argue with. And then for a little bit of rear delt work, so I haven't really been too happy with how my traps and rear delts have been coming up from my row variations. I feel like my back overall has been really good, but just my upper back hasn't really come along for the journey as much as what I would like it to. So I've involved a couple of extended, like I think they're called like Kelso shrugs. I think they're called. So like after I've done incline bench pull and after I've done T-bar row, I'll just finish off with like those straight arm shrugs. I think they're called Kelso shrugs. They've been really good, and also on this day being a push day, but also just hitting a little bit of the rear delts. I know I've sort of hit mid delts, I suppose rear delts as well, so kind of been a bit of a shoulder day thrown in there, I guess. But yeah, just not too happy with how much my upper back development has come along, so I'm just throwing a couple more sets in there, just get a little bit of extra volume through them, hopefully try and bring them up a little bit. Also have a shrug coming up after this as well. Main cue I would say for rear delt exercises is when you get set up in that position, try and think about protracting your shoulder blades forward. I actually can't do it because I got long arms. I actually can't protract my shoulder blades fully forward, but if I could, try and think about protracting your shoulder blades forward, and then it allows you to squeeze back and you'll feel a lot more delt as opposed to squeezing through your rhomboids, your mid traps, and squeezing through there and like almost bringing your shoulder blades together. So think about bringing your shoulder blades around the ribs and then extending the arms and trying to think about swooping out. Really good way of thinking of it is if there was money on the floor and if you scooped out the farthest you could get to sort of like keep all that money. So try and scoop out as far as you can when doing these rear delt flies. It's going to help target and you'll feel it much more in the rear delts as opposed to just pulling your shoulder blades together as you get like sort of more rhomboid and mid trap there. And then for this next one, this last one, just got, a bit of upper traps there. I really like the bench supported variation, which allows you to lean forward a little bit because not only do the upper traps aid with the elevation, so like coming up into the shrug position, but they'll also aid with a bit of retraction as well. So by putting yourself a little bit forward, you get a little bit of that retraction as well as the elevation. So it kind of like just lines the fibers up a little bit better by having a slight lean forward like that, as opposed to just standing straight up and down. So yeah, pretty simple on this one. Just knocking them out, going for it. Pretty short rest break. Only do 2 sets. Take it completely to failure. Just making sure again that you're getting that full stretch. I'm trying to let the traps stretch as much as I can and really let that weight pull me forward as much as possible. Definitely recommend straps for this. If you're not a big fan of using straps, you don't want the wrist to be a limiting factor when it comes to just doing shrugs. So I definitely recommend that. So yeah, that's the workout, guys. Let me know if you would like me to go into any more detail or you'd like me to do these videos in a certain way. Thinking about for the next couple of ones that are coming up, I might actually mic myself up. I'll do it in the studio. Obviously, won't do it at the gym. It's too busy. But I'll do it in the studio and I can talk you guys through like real time what I'm thinking, what I'm doing with certain exercises, how I'm thinking about progressing at certain exercises. So maybe you might find that informative. But yeah, hopefully it's been helpful, guys. This was my day 6 push focus, bit of everything focus, to be honest. It's more like a accessory day. Anything that doesn't get enough volume through the week, I'll just chuck it on this day. So yeah, hope you enjoy, guys, and I'll catch you in the next one.